Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Just Make It Pretty podcast. Today's episode explores something that I am really passionate about, and that is the hidden breakdowns that happen in the home buyer journey before the conversation with any salespeople even starts. So today I have a guest coming back to the show. He was a guest on season 1, and the conversation was so good. And I can't wait to bring him back to talk about how small details like website forms and generic call to actions and even just poor expectation setting are quietly just killing deals all over the home building industry. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation with you guys today. So if you are interested, please stick around and we are about to dive in. Welcome to the Just Make It Pretty podcast, the marketing and mindset show for home builders and beyond. I'm your host, Sarah Haynes, and around here we go beyond pretty pictures and we get honest about what's working, what's not, and what it really takes to build better brands, better experiences, and better teams. You'll find creative ideas, practical strategies, and conversations that actually matter. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get started. Please welcome back James Matt from BuilderChat. Thank you for being here, James.
Yeah, you're welcome, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me back.
Of course. Yeah. No, when we had our little conversation before this, I feel like we talked forever, first of all. And second of all, we had so many different topics that we wanted to talk about for this episode. So I'm super excited to sit down with you and kind of hash some of this out.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, it was pretty funny. We could have turned that call into the episode probably, but
I
here we
know.
are again.
I know we could have just hit record a little bit earlier, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So if somebody from our audience, our listeners today didn't hear you the first time on the podcast, which if you didn't, go back and find that episode. But would you kind of just give us a real quick who you are and who BuilderChat is?
Yeah, for sure. I'm James, of course. I've been in the new home building industry for, oh God, I think it's 23 years this year, basically my entire working career. And back in 2024, my co-founder and I founded a company called BuilderChat. And BuilderChat's an invisible buyer loss prevention and recovery platform for home builders. And we use the power of AI to help builders capture missed buyer intent, reactivate aged leads, and support homeowners during the build and after possession.
Awesome. We love what you do over there at BuilderChat, and it's been really cool watching you guys grow as well. You share so much good data and insights and stuff on social media. So if you guys aren't following BuilderChat on LinkedIn, definitely do that. They post really interesting things all the time.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much. And yeah, it's been really great watching you guys grow. And we absolutely love everything you guys are doing over at Shared Drive as well. It's always
Well,
fun
thank
to
you.
collaborate where we can.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been good. I want to dive right into the episode today. I want to talk about what you were just talking about in your intro, ways that builders are losing deals, losing sales, and how that buyer journey is working right now. I'd love to pose you a question to start us out. Where do you, or when do you look at, like, when you're looking at builder journeys and how builders are structuring their builder journey today, especially with everything being online, where do you think that we have the biggest opportunities? Where are the biggest disconnects at?
That's a huge question, and it's almost an entire journey thing, but I don't want to make it sound overwhelming as well. Of course, when you're testing, playing around with things in marketing, you do want to limit the amount of levers you pull so you can actually see the impact it makes. What we're going to talk about here today, I don't want a builder marketing expert to be like, oh no, we have to revamp the whole thing at once kind of thing. But I think there's a bunch of levers we could look at toggling. And one thing that I find is interesting within home building is it's like a very kind of closed loop industry. And I find that many professionals and experts in the space, they feed off of each other and benchmark off of each other. And what we really like to do is step outside of home building for a couple reasons. I find other industries adapt and move much quicker. And there's just so much more data that you can tap into. So there's a lot of things that I look into that you just can't even find niche specific data in the home building industry. To answer that question in one sentence, I would say let's just take a look at the buyer journey and how things are structured, right? I did a deep dive into the show home model home concept a little while ago, and I was pretty surprised to see that that sales model is being used by home builders for over 100 years now, which totally blew my mind. And then, of course, how they would feed their top of funnel back then was like flyers and things like that, and maybe like radio as that emerged, and television, of course. But now websites and, of course, digital marketing have taken the place of a lot of those old school marketing methods. But if we look at our websites, like how much has the website structure and the website journey changed, and how slowly or quickly is that evolving? And I think that's where it comes in. Builders have a really unique challenge, especially for the large builders, right? They have so many product offerings, so many
Yes.
communities. You can't do a single scroll website that works for a lot of other offerings that are direct to consumer. So we do have a unique challenge there, but it's like, what can we do to really streamline that, especially when the amount of information that buyers are looking at is so enormous? Yeah, I think it's micro steps along the way, but I do think that almost the entire digital journey in home building needs an overhaul.
Yeah. Yeah, that does sound like a lot of work, a lot of big things, but I agree with you. It's a combination of a bunch of little things. And what I've seen is a lot of builders are still thinking of their buyer journey as very linear and they're going to go through all these very simple steps, which we know now with AI and with all of the new technologies and with just social media. So many things have changed since we really could rely on that super linear journey. And so for a lot of builders, making small tweaks are going to make a huge difference because you're going to be tapping into an avenue that you weren't even looking at before. And you're going to find places where you could be losing buyers that you didn't even know about. So I think while it does seem, oh my gosh, everything's changing and we have to make all these changes, I think if you focus on the high impact, small changes incrementally over time, that's going to be a much better plan for you, then everything's dead and we have to throw it all out.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think some things are going to be done away with as we move forward over the coming years with how rapidly technology is advancing. And of course, that's impacting people's behavior online on every single platform. All of the platforms that offer digital advertising are like optimizing and doing things with AI, and how all of this is delivered and actually served to potential buyers online is all rapidly changing as well. I think it's part of the contributing factor to why the buyer journey has become so sporadic and less linear is because there's just access to so much now, right? Every year I usually just evaluate our insurance and things like that, right? But there's tons of platforms you can hop on right now where they price shop 20 different insurance providers for you and you only have to fill one thing out, right? So these are the kind of resources that buyers are dealing with, right? You don't have to go see your new home consultant for guidance on financing and things like that. I noticed a new thing over the past maybe few years is you can access your credit report right through your banking apps a lot of the time now, which was when 5, 10 years ago, you would never know what your credit score is, or you'd have to call or contact somebody and figure that out. But now people are just so tapped in and things change so fast as well. So I really think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we talked about on the podcast several times about how our buyers are out there living in the world and all of these kind of just instant gratification type things. And the buyer's journey to buy other products it's so visual, it's so easy. We're getting used to all of these features. And so that's where home building has not caught up yet in all of those places where people are starting to come to expect. And the other thing that piggyback off of what you said too. We have so much information just available at our fingertips now. It's insane. And I even think about my kids, they're growing up with all of this information. You can Google or ask Alexa anything. And buyers are used to that as well. They're used to doing more research and getting more information that they just didn't do before. It was
Yeah.
like, we're going to go to that model home. That's where we're going to get our information. So I think world is changing, obviously, but I think builders have a lot more places for sales to drop off and people to disqualify you in their minds. And I'm not sure that we really understand where all those places are a lot of times. So I'd love, I guess for you, the question would be like, do you think we're making assumptions? Do you think we have all the data to even know where those points are?
Yeah, yes and no. We're getting there. And I think that a big aspect of like why a lot of these old tactics aren't working as effectively as they had in the past is because of how dialed in algorithms, especially leveraging AI and all of that, are getting where people actually spend their time, right? So they're not going to a home builder website and hanging out all day with their friends. So unfortunately, we don't have the robust data and insight into people using your home builder website as like a platform, a social media platform or something like
Yeah.
that does, right? But that's what's impacting the behavior everywhere else as well, because that's getting so dialed in. I like to use the term hyper personalization, right? People are used to seeing what they want to see instantly in most of the places that they spend a lot of time, right? And personally, I've never been really huge on social media, especially on the personal side, a little bit more professionally. But I know a lot of people, they spend hours a day on social media, right? Yes. What do you
That's
got, right?
me.
It's like a single scroll, right? No
Mhm.
effort, and everything is being served to you, dialed in exclusively for what you like to pay attention to, down to the millisecond, right? That's how sharp these algorithms are. Those are the expectations we're competing against a little bit here. And I joke around, but it's a half joke. I like to use the big bank analogy. I think the reason that the home building industry gets away with moving a bit slower is because it's the industry as an aggregate that's taken that approach, right? Like when banking hours are 9 to 5, you're not going to go open a new bank account to bank better hours because everyone has the same hours. So it's the same with home building right now. We are starting to see things evolve. And I do want to give credit where credit is due. Like I said earlier, I think home building marketing teams and sales teams have a very unique challenge. And not only are they dealing with a huge amount of offerings and really complex buying environment, fluctuating interest rates, global uncertainty, all this kind of stuff. So it's super dynamic and super challenging. Totally get it. But yeah, I think we do have some opportunity here. And as the industry shifts, I think we'll probably see a few key players break through that with how they structure things. And some people are, if you're waiting for the data, industry specific data, you're going to be catching up with those leaders as that data emerges.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think social media has trained us as just humanity that we should have only what's most interesting to us and exactly what we're looking for all the time, instantly. And I find myself falling into that. Like when my TikTok algorithm is not what I want, I'm like so annoyed. I'm like, none of these videos were interesting to me.
Yeah,
And it's such a, it sounds like such a spoiled brat, but that we're all more and more like that.
yeah.
And but that's why platforms like Zillow and realtor.com, they exist because you can scroll through the homes. And I do that with a social media platform. I think our industry is headed the right direction. But I think
Yeah.
on the builder side, I think a lot of us are still looking at browser behaviors and or browsing behaviors and what the clicks are going to tell us and things like that. And I don't think that's really what we want. I don't think that's really giving us the same insights that it used to. So I wonder, before we move into really tactical things that builders can do, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the data that we are looking at. Is it giving us the insights that we want?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and it ties into what we just discussed. And when a buyer comes to your website, I like to use the analogy of a big box store, so a Home Depot or Costco or something, right? And when you're looking at the visitor flow, which pages they're looking at and what
Yes.
they're clicking on, it's almost as if you're sitting there watching the camera. Picture yourself as an owner of one of these stores, and you're watching people wander through your store and then basically assuming that you can guess what they came in for. Let's assume they left without buying something. You're basically assuming you can guess their intent just by watching them walk through the store. But as we discussed earlier, builder websites are huge. There's a lot of info, a lot of offerings, a lot of communities. So that doesn't necessarily help us discover or dial into what their intent actually was. And time on site can be misleading as well, because they may have spent more time on your site because they couldn't find what they were looking for, which is obviously not good. And then we're making assumptions and decisions and even deploying significant amounts of marketing capital based on watching people wander through the aisles. Using that same analogy, of course, the ultimate best way, since we don't have the ability to tap into data that social media platforms have, is to talk to as many people as you can and ask about all of that and have more conversations, more confirmation and less assuming, I think. And do we have the data now? I think there's a lot of teams and a lot of products and services that are focused on that. So I think we're getting there. And as builders become more innovative and start tapping into more of this technology, it's a feedback loop that'll help us get better as well. We're slowly getting there. And I think a lot of people are starting to pay attention to metrics they may not have paid as much attention to in the past. But some of the things I'd like to highlight is just being a little bit more dialed in, right? Are we tracking form abandonment, form clicks versus form completion, and things like this? Getting a little bit more specific on some of the CTAs that you're already using can give you some deeper insight into what's actually working and what's not working. And it also unlocks the opportunity for more dialed in split tests as well, right? That's one way that teams can tap into more data without necessarily changing what they're doing today, is just trying to get a little bit more dialed in and specific on the types of data that they're already looking at. So
Yeah, no, we have all the technology we need to track all of those things. And it's so interesting because I don't see a ton of builders doing a lot of A/B testing with call to actions or subject lines and emails and things like that. I don't see it. I know they're out there. I know people are doing them, but I think that's an opportunity that a lot of builders could start doing. And you actually said something that was super interesting, because behavioral psychology and like all of that is so interesting to me, and like how easily we're overwhelmed as humans and jump, and I think it's fascinating. But you were talking about something really interesting before. It was just about forms and how we could be a lot more strategic with our website forms and getting people to fill them out. So I'd love if you could talk about that a little bit more. What are buyers getting wrong, or what could we be trying?
yeah, totally. I think a lot of this kind of goes back to the earlier 2000s and moving into the 2010s where everything was form gated. And there's like a tug of war because teams want good leads, they want qualified leads, but leads are potential buyers are less inclined to express that type of behavior online now because of how streamlined and simple most things are.
Mhm.
So when they hit a form on your website, number one, and I hope some of the people listening play around with this, is instead of having the same generic contact form on every page, just getting a little bit more specific, right? Contact us with questions could be learn more about this home, and actually have the home's address, like the page that they're on, being that specific, right? On the financing page, have questions about financing, get in touch with our lender partners. Super dialed in, at least page specific. And that kind of brings us in the direction of hyper personalization that I touched on earlier and what people are becoming so accustomed to today. But form complexity is a killer of forms, right? So if you go to pretty much 90% of builders' websites, I could list everybody's form structure right now and call me out in the comments if you're one of the builders not doing this, right? But it's
Yeah.
first name, last name, email, phone number. Some or all of those will be mandatory. And we're already pushing it here. We're hitting 4 fields. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but we're drastically increasing drop off already with the amount of personal information we're asking for. And then again, instead of the form being specific, often there'll be a drop down. Which community are you interested in? And comments and stuff. So by the time you're said and done, you have this form with 4 on the optimized side, usually not very specific, pretty generic as far as the CTA itself. And I've seen some that they're like 8 fields, right? So They almost feel like they're signing a contract just to get a question answered. Reducing form complexity is huge. I actually have a couple notes here. Form Stack, cited by Live Session, is a report from 2025, reports a 68% form abandonment rate tied directly to form complexity. And that's where I mentioned earlier, actually tracking clicks versus completion is super important. And that'll give you a clearer picture of what's actually happening. Is somebody clicking on your form and they see how complex it is and then they just churn? And then for other form, the other type of form, which is static and you can actually see the whole thing on the website, if you're not seeing conversions from that and you're seeing that dive, which all the industry data has reported over the past couple of years, complexity could be a huge part of that. And what I've noticed is a lot of teams, what they're doing is they're removing the requirement for certain fields, but they're still leaving all of those fields there. And unfortunately, that doesn't reduce the friction subconsciously for somebody that's on your website. So if they see 8 fields and only 2 are required, they still see 8 and it still increases churn. So
That's so interesting because as someone in sales and the OSC, we want all that info. We need your name. We need to be able to call you, right? And so it's very important to us. But I think it's really easy to not think about it from the buyer's perspective of, wow, you're asking for a ton of information, or even just like how difficult it is. And it's not it in reality, when we think about it, like it's not hard to type in your name and your email to a form, but it kind of goes back to social media. I always apply it to social media. Like when we ask people to write a comment, that's a big ask. You have to think of it, you have to write it down, you're putting yourself out there, all of these things. And we're so focused on just comment. It's so good for our algorithm. Just comment. We're going to ask you a question or whatever. But like when it actually comes down to it, it actually is a much bigger ask than what we're thinking about on our side. So I feel like forms are the same way. And people are worried that they're just gonna give all their info and then not get what they're looking for, right? And so I love what you were saying about make it hyper personalized. And I would even go a step further, is make it show the value to that person. I'm going to fill out this form and here's exactly what you're going to get. Here's exactly what is going to happen after. So there's not this question of just like, all right, cool, I just put my personal information and it's now just out in the internet. I want to know that something's going to happen.
yeah, totally relevant perceived value to the person
Mhm.
filling out the form. Totally key. Sign up to our newsletter. Nobody wants to be subscribed to another newsletter typically. And even if they do, they don't read it a lot of the time, right? You touched on a really important fact when you said teams are thinking more about what they need. And
Mhm.
I think that's really true. And it's interesting that a builder team, they'll get together at whatever intervals throughout the year. I know one of the last builders I worked for, they'd have a quarterly meeting with all the sales managers and they would actually strategize on the type of inventory that they were planning for the next quarter and then of course on a yearly basis as well. You have teams, they understand this and they're not sitting there designing and building homes based on the preferences of the leadership that's sitting around that table. They're looking at what the buyers want and they're planning with that in mind. But when we look at sales and marketing on the front end, of course, doesn't really apply to this. If you're driving traffic, something's resonating. But once they hit the website, it's like all about the builder. I want this, that, the other for it to be a lead. Whereas that's just not the case anymore. And part of this, again, goes back to social media. If you go to fill out a form on social, it already knows everything about you. Same on LinkedIn, and it pre-populates all your stuff. You don't have to do that, right? Like, why are we asking them to do this? Are we asking them to do it in the way that we prefer because we want more info? Or is it just because it's the way we've always done it? Or are we actually looking at how buyers behave online as an aggregate and then adapting to interact with them the way that they prefer? And I really think that's a missing component.
Oh yeah. Oh, I have so many things to say. So many things because it's so true. And I think that we really getting ourselves into the mind of our buyers it's a really good exercise that I would just encourage everybody to do. And think about the last time you went through a home buying journey and things like that. What are the things, even as someone who's in home building and marketing all the time, going through my own home building journey has taught me so much about what it's really like on the other side. And I don't know, it's so interesting to me. So one of the things that I've seen, and I've had a few builder clients that have implemented this or done things similar, and it was really cool, was like making their forms, instead of just being like, hey, give us all this info and we'll reach out, they structured it like a quiz. Oh, and so
Yeah.
it's like, give us, what kind of home are you looking for? Here are like some different options. And they actually gathered so much more data than they did with their regular contact forms. But after the people had gone through, they felt understood. They felt, oh, this is now going to be personalized. We got a lot more response from that and a lot more information. And people were more willing to put in their name at the end of that and their email. And I don't see a ton of builders doing that. Let me match you with your dream home. And it really was not a huge lift to even build a multi-step form that kind of acted like that. I know there's some really cool apps out there that will do it and vendors that will provide things like that too. But it even a basic level of that. Most of our form builders now have the capability to do something similar. So I'm wondering, have you seen anything like that? Is step-based better than not step-based? What's your insights?
Yeah, 100%. I'm really glad that you brought that up. Step-based forms, if you really want to dig into that data, are definitely more effective. And what you're showing is one field at a time. Again, it does have to be super relevant, right? I'm not going to even engage in a quiz for no reason, but it's like the yes ladder concept in sales, right? Which is a little bit of a greasy tactic, but it's like you ask the prospect a bunch of questions that they're inclined to say yes to. So they open up and they get used to saying yes to you, right? Of course, pre-qualifying a buyer is a much better approach, but that concept is real and it is effective. And that's what you're getting in a step-based form is you're actually getting them used to filling a field out and submitting it to you. Better is having it auto submit after
Yep.
and automatically go to the next step, of course. But you're basically getting them used to that. And then by the time it gets to contact details, they've already submitted a few fields. They're comfortable with that action. So they're a little bit more inclined to do that. So yeah, that's a huge improvement. And there's tons of studies out there that have proven the efficacy of a step-based form over a static form with complex fields.
I think another thing too, and I've read a study about this and I've come across this, and I'm not necessarily recommending it, but from a psychology standpoint, it's really interesting. Even just the time invested now, you have this time invested. I've gotten this
Yeah.
far. I've gone through 5 steps, right? Like I
Yeah.
want to just finish it. And people really exploit that. And this is the part where I'm like, don't do this. This is scammy. But people will exploit it and add fake loading into forms because now you have invested even more time, and it makes you also think, oh, it's doing a bunch of work in the background. It's building my profile right now. But it's not, it's a graphic that's spinning and that's it. But there is this perceived investment value of that time when you go through multiple fields.
Yeah, totally. And something I should have brought up earlier, but not only are we dealing with really complex buying environment, the home buying journey, even with how optimized and how digital everything is, still very long as well, right? It's like I
Yeah.
think it's average 7 weeks still, 7 to 8 weeks. We do have the challenge of building rapport and trust, lasting rapport and trust with a buyer as well. So it's not like a quick purchase where you have to build enough trust and rapport to complete the sale instantaneously. You have to build enough trust and rapport with them that they're going to come back and talk to you again, and maybe even hopefully look at you as like an advisor that they can confide in when questions in the journey come up while they're somewhere else, and inevitably they are going to go to other places and talk to other people. I can see where that delayed step-based form might be effective in certain things, but when the payoff is not what they expected after investing that much time,
Yes.
that's where you could have a negative impact on trust, which is super important in the home buying journey. So
Absolutely. And that's why going too far into that is detrimental, like I said. But I think I think building trust and actually delivering what you said. And that's where I always think about the call to actions. If you've put up there, okay, fill out this and we're going to send you your personalized home plan. Send them a personalized home plan when you're done and make sure that you're following through on what you promised. But that's where really crafting your messaging and what your call to actions are going to be is so important. And almost every single website that I audit or look at, they've got the learn more buttons. Click here to learn more or read more. And it's like, no one wants to do that. I don't want to read more, even though if you were to say what they're going to read or what they're going to find, they would be interested in it. They will read it. But when you say just this generic, just read more, boring, no.
Yeah. Yeah, you're giving them, they feel like they're being handed a homework assignment, right? And that's what's really interesting to watch in the buyer behavioral shifts that we're seeing here today. And I think because of how much exposure everybody has to everything, they're just becoming more savvy, right? Like, why don't they want to fill out a form? Because they know they're getting pulled into a sales process and they're going to have somebody calling them and texting them and emailing to follow up and bug them when they don't want to be in that scenario, right? Like, how do we adjust that a little bit and engage with them in the way that they want to be engaged with? And going back to kind of old school sales, that was like a way to pre-qualify a buyer, right? You give them homework, and if they complete that, that shows a level of buying intent. But again, people are sick of doing homework. They don't need to. I can have ChatGPT or Gemini do something that would have taken me hours before in 30 seconds, right? So people are savvy. They've been through it all hundreds of times, and their expectations for ease of delivery are rapidly changing. So yeah, the header, the title of any sort of CTA needs to be like at least relevant. We are moving towards hyper personalization and everything we're talking about. And then the CTA, the button to click, has to be what you're going to get and not be work for the client anywhere possible. So
Yeah, that's so huge. And that's such an easy change to go through your website and change out what all your buttons say. That's not going to be a huge lift. It's not going to be super expensive. So those are the kind of things that I think if more buyers or more builders really paid attention to, you could really make a pretty big impact and not have a lot of time or money invested. So
yeah.
I love those kind of tips because I feel like that's something you all can run with right now and then really spend the time really diving into more deep analytics and deeper insights and spend the money where it's going to make more impact even than just those changes.
Yeah.
That's a great first step, I think.
Yeah, one of the benefits of having the same generic form on every page is do a little test. Remove one form field. It's like a click on a button, click on your mouse, and track the impact and see what happens. So yeah, it's like a great, really low lift action item, and it does have impact, 100%.
So I want to jump back to something that you said because I think it's really important and that we were talking about buyer trust and it's really easy to lose it. But I think it's also something that we don't think about a lot is when does that trust start? Like when do those expectations that these buyers actually have? Like when does that start? So I'd love if you could talk about like how early in our journey did these expectations start getting set and maybe where we're not really looking.
That's super dynamic too, and I find this really interesting. It's really common in the home building industry with taglines for builders, and a lot of them say something like, "We don't build houses, we build relationships," or something like that. Very common, but even as you like yourself, ask yourself like, how many times have you went to buy a new car or a house, and you were like, "I just really want to buy my house off of somebody that I can be friends with." Right? Nobody thinks about it that way. So it's like, how can we establish trust? I think transparency is the best way to establish trust with somebody. And we're seeing that live today in the home building industry. It's pretty rare to hit a builder's website that doesn't have pricing on the website now. Believe it or not, I have come across a couple in the past year or so. So they are still out there. Well, floor plans used to be gated. We had to give that up. Pricing used to be gated. We had to give that up, right? Transparency, in my mind, is the ultimate way to build trust. And at the end of the day, I don't want you to pretend to be my friend. I want you to tell me the way it is. And on a complex, high ticket purchase, I don't want any surprises, right? transparency, and then setting expectations goes along with transparency as well. And transparency is part of that, right? If I go to buy a home, I see it on your website for 500K, and by the time you pass the contract over to me, it's 535. I'm probably not going to be that happy, right? This is, again, a balancing act. I know it's a really dynamic industry. People can add things, take away things, pricing changes all the time, but they get enough surprises on the back end, right? The interest rate shifts, and all of a sudden their affordability is impacted. I think on the builder side, that's really going to be the new metric that teams are going to have to pay attention to. And I like to call it speed to clarity. So it used to just be speed to lead, and then they go through this linear process if you can get them into your funnel. But now it's speed to clarity. So if they're dealing with somebody who's super ambiguous and, oh, I don't know, we have, when they come to you and you're super dialed in and you can give them the answer that they're looking for, that's going to immediately establish trust. And then again, with the expectations, you have to be doing that realistically, not trying to bait and switch or blindside any prospect. And when I was selling custom builds, it was super huge. One of the things custom builders are super afraid of is giving pricing. And I get it, because you're like, we don't know what you want to build. How can I give you a price? But we came up with two base pricing package tiers that had a cost per foot. And it's here's what's included and here's what it starts at. So they can run it in their mind. They're like, yeah, I want a 2,000 square foot house. This package starts at that. I still have some elbow room for upgrades. They know it's possible for them, right? And so many people would just be like, thank you so much. I called 3 or 4 other custom builders and none of them would give me a price. They all wanted me to come in for a meeting, right? The world's moving really fast. People are working more than ever. Most families have all adults in the household working now, right? So people don't have endless time to burn on meetings with when they don't even know if they can afford something. So yeah, speed to clarity is a new way to build trust and keep that moving.
I love that. Speed to clarity is so good. And I think it affects not only us in marketing because we're that first touch of giving clarity, but then it's also for our sales team and something that I feel like the whole company can rally around, from marketing, sales, construction, everybody, making sure that we are giving as much clarity in this entire process as possible and making sure that whatever expectations we set are met, like what we're making sure that we're communicating and giving all the information. So I think it's key. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think technology is the key to that. We have so many new tools and the ability to communicate better. So I'm really excited about that.
Totally. And what you just brought up reminded me of a really important shift that we're seeing as well. So, what we're seeing with the level of access to information that we have for the average consumer that's online with AI and everything is they're pre-qualifying themselves before they want to speak to a team. And another colleague and I were just talking about this. Marketing used to be this much of the journey, and then sales was this much, but it's inverting right
Mhm.
now, and marketing is becoming more of the journey, and sales is more about closing now for potential buyers that have already self pre-qualified. They know what they're looking for, they know what they can afford. They don't really need sales help with that. What they need sales help with is keeping up that buyer momentum when that intent is there, and giving them everything they need to make a decision as efficiently as possible. And I can't remember what it was, but it was like one of the sales trainings I did a while back. And what they were teaching is that disqualifying a prospect is just as important as qualifying one, right? So if they're not a good fit, your goal should be to get them to a yes or no as efficiently as possible, whatever that answer is. And when we're talking about something as important as a home, that's for whatever's best for the buyer, right? So sometimes they might think it's the right decision and you might have to help reality check them. But the faster you can get somebody who's not the right fit or not qualified to a no, the more time you can spend with real buyers as well. So it helps teams actually be more efficient. But it's really exciting, interesting to see all of these shifts happening. And for anybody that's looking for data or studies, hit me up. I'm always happy to share. But also, if you can't find what you're looking for, look to other industries. And I think
Mhm.
within home building, we have have this idea that because of how high the price tag is and how important the purchase is, we're like this unicorn industry and buyers behave differently in home building, but it's not necessarily true. All of those purchases and interactions that they have repeatedly on a regular basis, that's what's forming their behavior patterns and their expectations. And they do expect that to carry through to a high ticket important purchase as well.
I love that you're like marketing is a bigger part of the buyer journey now, because I agree. And I still see so many builders, they don't invest the money into the marketing, even though it's becoming more and more important. And it scares me for them, because I'm like, marketing takes a minute to build up. It's not an instant, you just flip a switch and turn it on. You're going to get to a point where you're going to be like, oh, hey, we need to start marketing, or the market's going to get harder and we're going to need to start doing a little bit more promotion. And now you're like behind. And now all of these things that we're talking about now, it's, oh, your list is so huge. Whereas you could do that incrementally over time, let this build up, test things. That's such a better strategy for any company. Yeah. I'll get off my soapbox, but that's so important. I feel like I just talk about that all the time. And I'm just like, please, guys, listen to this one thing. If you can just listen to that, that's the thing.
It's really interesting to me that marketing is looked at as an expense. And there's been a bunch of studies around counter cyclical marketing as well. And it's the saying in the stock market, right? When there's blood in the streets, buy. It's like the market's taking a dip. Many, and not just builders, many teams actually cut back on marketing when that happens, right?
Don't do that.
But realistically, I kicked around this concept of a strategic marketing reserve, and investors will do this as well. They'll have a certain amount of cash on hand, even though cash is trash most of the time, and they'll save that for when there's fantastic buying opportunities. Marketing is an investment as well. And when the market's heading down, it's slowing down a bit, and everybody else is drawing back, you're getting marketing on sale. The cost per click is going down. There's less noise you're competing against,
Mhm.
right? So I'd love to hear of a builder that's doing the strategic marketing reserve. And it's like you figure out your marketing budget and you inversely raise or lower it, right? And when the market's really hot, you're going to have buyers pounding on your door anyway. Draw back your marketing spend, but bank that. It's still getting spent every month. Build up that reserve. And when the market shifts and slows down, you'll be able to ramp up and you're still spending the same amount as you did before, right? So just a little
Yeah.
bit more of a strategic deployment on that. And I think a bit of a mindset set shift on what marketing actually is. Because if anybody's into investing and you approach them and you said, hey, I could get you a 20% return on this investment guaranteed in a year, people's mind would be blown. They'd be super excited to invest in that. But then you look at marketing and they're getting $2 or $3 back for every dollar they spend, and they look at it as an expense, and they're like, man, you're getting a 200 300% return here. You should be spending $1 billion a year. But
It's so true. I think that we talk about being market proof, that what you just said, that's how you are market proof. That's such a great way. So I think that's fantastic advice. And I haven't heard of a lot of builders that do it that way. I
I
think we're just
haven't,
very reactionary.
yeah, I haven't met one yet. I've seen some teams that they at least hold steady, which is really great. But even if it's not converting right away, again, going back to how long the buyer's journey is, you're building that brand recognition and staying front of mind for when they're ready to make a decision. Even when buyers are hesitant, demand does build up. Pent up demand is real. I've seen it several times for the 20 plus years I've been in home building. You still got to be there for them, right?
I already shared my one thing that I wish builders would listen to from this episode. So now I get to ask you, what is the one thing that you wish builders understood about the buyer journey, and what do you want them to take away from this conversation?
I would say that it's rapidly evolving and we don't quite know where it's going to be in 2, 3, 5 years. So get comfortable experimenting and get comfortable changing things because it's absolutely going to be required. And we saw the massive disruption with AI and LLMs being released to the public just a few years ago. All it takes is one technological leap to drastically change everything. Yeah, just be fluid and have some fun with it. And that would be my biggest takeaway.
So yeah, marketing should be fun. I feel like we're fun people over here in marketing, and we should have some fun with it.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Well,
I'd
thank
also
you
like
so
to
much.
see sales and marketing be a little bit more merged, but
Oh
that's like
gosh,
another episode.
James, that's a whole nother podcast that we all can start right now because I totally agree. They should be having
Yeah,
fun together.
totally. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you for joining me today again, James. If anybody does want to reach out to you, like I said in the beginning of the episode, James's LinkedIn is amazing. So definitely go over there, follow Builder Chat as well. But is there any other ways that people could reach out to you if they were interested?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to chat with anybody. And I just really have fun jamming out. Always interested to hear anybody's perspective. You can stop by our website, builderchat.us. And yeah, I'm pretty accessible. So,
Awesome. All right. Everyone go do that. Check out Builder Chat and all of their solutions for AI chats for your website. Also, we have the Builder Chat bot on our website over at sharedrive.com. So you can check out that as well. And yeah, definitely reach out and then come back for our next episode as well. I think we always have amazing guests, but I get really excited about these conversations where we get to talk about psychology and the buyer journey. I've got a few other episodes lined up coming out soon that are going to be about that same topic. So definitely come back. Thank you for listening in today. Please this video, like this podcast, comment below. I'll do all the internet things. That is so helpful to me. I really appreciate it. And we will see you in the next one. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.